pass from time, fire towards the end zone. Leaping grab, touchdown.
1:15 left to play to decide the state champion in Division 4. They will hand it to Blue. Running left, he got undercut. He got hit near the marker. I think he might be short.
Live from Max&Ermas in Westerville.
And we welcome you to Max&Ermas here in Westerville, week number 2 of the 2018 high school football season. So glad to see all of you with us here tonight on EBSN, along with the quarterback Greg Frey, Marty Bannister, as we bring you this week in high school football from the Ohio High School Athletic Association and, of course, EBSN Online. Again, it's week number 2 of the high school football season. Yeah, already week number 2. Yeah, it's amazing how it flies by through the preseason, all the scrimmages, and we're already into week 2. As mentioned, the quarterback Greg Frey is alongside. I'm Marty Bannister. We got a big show program for you tonight. The executive director of the Ohio High School Athletic Association, Jerry Snodgrass, will be joining us here at our center mic here in just a couple of moments. From Olentangy Berlin, head coach Mark Norrie, his program in its first year won its first game last Friday night. We'll talk about that. Westerville South head coach Matt Chris scheduled to join us, and we'll have some other guests as well too before we wrap it all up here tonight at Max&Ermas. We're with you till 9 o'clock this evening, and again we're at the Max&Ermas at the corner of Maxtown and 3C Old State Street, however you wish to phrase it. That's where we're at. You'll find us here again every Wednesday from 7 until 9 o'clock. Let's get your thoughts, Greg. Number one, first of all, from week number 1, the great thing was, I'm sure almost every coach would agree, the weather cooperated. And usually at this time of the year, you kind of cross your fingers when you go that first week.
It did. I mean, it wasn't that hot, It didn't get storms, which is great. And typically, the first couple weeks of the year, that can happen. And knock on wood, Friday looks to be pretty toasty. So who knows what's going to happen, but you're going to get that. It's still summer, right? It's not fall yet, so. But yeah, 1 for 1, we like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. You look back at week number 1, some big games in that first week. I think some of the games that stand out, and again, we'll go down a lot of those games and kind of break them down for you. But a couple that really stood out to me in week number 1, Reynoldsburg going to Upper Arlington and winning. I think it was a big victory. A lot of folks think that Reynoldsburg football team is going to be very, very good. They've got a lot of talent. And Pickerington North for the second straight year shutting out Olentangy Liberty.
I've had a sneak peek at Reynoldsburg quarterback Michael Watley over the last couple months, and I really like him. He's a lefty, and he threw 2 touchdown passes in that game, and they've got a lot of athletes. But, I think he's a guy at a position of the quarterback that can deliver the football to a lot of athletes. They've been athletic for many years, and they're very physical. So that's a team to be reckoned with. And, to beat UA week 1, that's a big deal.
At Upper Arlington. And also, let's not forget, on Sunday, Pickerington Central. How impressive were the defending Division I state champions, knocking off Chicago Phillips just a short distance from here at Otterbein. A couple of big plays right before the end of the half where they capitalized with one on a turnover and they got another touchdown. A pretty impressive start for Jay Sherritt's team.
Dominant. And again, they start where they left off. They create 6 turnovers on defense. Jeff Lamonaco up to his old tricks, creating turnovers on defense, short field for the offense. It's the same old story. It doesn't matter who they play. And again, very athletic, very physical. That is a very good football team.
And to go into a situation like that against really what would have to be an unknown opponent. They have talent. It's a team from Illinois after all. But to go in and handle it the way that they did, close game towards the end of the half, but then to really take charge in the remaining moments of the first half and the second half, tells you a lot about Central.
Well, and I think to me the play of the game, if I read it correctly, you create a turnover 2 seconds left in the first half, literally, and you score on the last play of the half. And that's a game breaker, especially when you got a team on the road. They broke their backs and just put it away. And they got to a running clock in the third quarter. Who would have thunk that in a game of that magnitude? But, again, they're explosive. And you're going to see some more games like that out of them.
No question. So that's a lot of what happened in week number 1, and we'll talk about that and get into week number 2 as well, too. We're going to take a quick time out. When we return, we're going to bring in the executive director of the Ohio High School Athletic Association, Jerry Snodgrass, to give us an update on week 1 and talk a little OHSAA for you as we do it here. We are live at Max&Ermas in Westerville. This is the OHSAA This Week in High School Football. We'll have more for you coming up in a moment right here on EBSN.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between 2 great teams and 2 passionate fan bases. This season, join Germain Honda of Dublin and Germain Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Germain Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference in your game.
And we welcome you back to the Max&Ermas in Westerville. It's the Ohio High School League Association's This Week in High School Football, along with the quarterback, Greg Frey and Marty Bannister. So glad you're with us here on this Wednesday evening as we get you into week number 2 of the high school football season. We want your questions, comments. You can hit us up on Facebook Live, on Twitter as well. He's at Greg Frey 15. I'm at Marty Bannister, and he's at Jerry Snodgrass, correct?
Jerry_Snodgrass.
Jerry_Snodgrass, the executive director of the OHSAA, is spending some time with us here tonight. We're so glad to have him with us in his first year as the executive director of the OHSAA. Just took the job on a full-time basis.
Mid-July, early July.
And I would gather everything has gone swimmingly for you so far?
Boy, you're being pretty
swimmingly. That's he tossed you a softball to get started.
You know, every day is a challenge, and I'm not new to that. You know, in terms of challenges in previous jobs and everything else. And I've been at the association since my 11th year, anyhow. So no, there have been challenges, including a recent Supreme Court case.
Well, we'll get into that in a little bit. Little bit.
But it's full of challenges, and certainly I welcome those.
And I would think, Jerry, there's no place you'd rather be right now.
There really isn't. You know, I think some of us, whether you're a quarterback, you know, regardless of what you do, you kind of strive for those leadership positions. You know, when I was an assistant coach, I wanted to be a head coach. When I was an assistant athletic director, I wanted to be the athletic director. When I was an assistant here, you never knew if that opportunity would present itself, but I looked forward if I had the opportunity to this. So I'm blessed to do it.
And what kind of pride do you take in this job? I mean, with your history and your history with the OHSAA, I mean, that's got to feel good for you.
You know, for me, it truly is a dream come true. I've said this many times. I think it's difficult to lead an organization if you've never been in the shoes of those you're leading. Mm-hmm. And I'm a product of the association. When I say I had a tough upbringing, no, people had a lot more a tougher time than I did, but I also had a challenging upbringing. And I had high school coaches and teachers that believed in me. I would not be here today without them. So to know that I have this opportunity truly to pay back, I owe it to the world I came from.
You and I have talked a number of times about your background and a Northwest Ohio guy from the Findlay area. Maybe tell the folks about a couple of guys that you've had a chance to Ben Roethlisberger, you were his
basketball
coach. Okay.
Ruined him enough in basketball that he
got him over
went
to football.
But you know, I always said internally in the office, since we don't have too many Steelers fans in there, that you know, arguably
they're everywhere. Unfortunately,
I always say I coached the best quarterback in the NFL. But honestly, he was a tremendous basketball player. School's leading scorer until just a couple of years ago. Wow. 27 a game his senior year. Was a great shortstop in baseball, and people look at him and have a hard time believing that. But his father, very athletic and great family. Still have a great relationship with him. So. Wonderful experience.
I wanted to bring that up not only because of the name, whatnot, but you just hit on the points I wanted to get into. Sometimes you see these days where kids maybe aren't as available to play as many sports as maybe Ben Roethlisberger did, but from that standpoint, I think things have become maybe a little too specialized right now where you don't see kids doing the 3-sport deal anymore.
It's getting a lot of publicity and a lot of, you know, people are really stressing the fact. I mean, you look at the Ohio State numbers and their recruits and how many were multi-sport athletes. And, you know, as much as we talk about it, there's still that pressure on the outside to 24/7 get involved in one sport. When you really think about it, you know, you look at those great athletes, and they did that. partly not just for their athleticism, but the experiences with it, the leadership capabilities, the mindset of it all. And I think that's so important. And hopefully, I'm in a position to help stress that.
No question. I would think, Greg, you were probably a three-sport athlete, weren't you?
I was a three-sport athlete until my sophomore year when I was nudged out of basketball.
Yeah.
Kindly nudged to drop one and do two. And I think that made some sense because, at a big high school, that's quite difficult to play all three. And a lot of guys do it, and I have respect for guys and girls that do three. But two's a good number. But I wanted to ask, what message would you give to parents? Because you've seen this from different perspectives. Mm-hmm. I'm a parent. What would you say to parents out there that about playing multiple sports or not?
Yeah, first of all, there are many kids, and I hear this a lot of times. They're not suited to play multiple sports, and I get that. I mean, their skill level, a kicker. I mean, whatever it may be. I mean, so it's not for everybody. But if you have that ability to do that, one, I think it keeps you fresh. I think it keeps you from, I don't like the term burnout necessarily, right. but for parents, be careful what you're investing in. You're starting that all solar system travel league when you're in grade or 4 years old. Yes. I'm not sure the benefits of that are really there. Right. And I've often said this, one of the things I love about football, and I think most football coaches would tell you this, if that individual didn't play anywhere in his career and came out his junior year, there's probably a spot for him. And I think that's the beauty of football, but that's the beauty of also being able to play multiple sports. Keep your mind open, keep your eyes open, and do it.
And I just want to add, you talk about being fresh. I can specifically relate to that. I played two sports at Ohio State, which a lot of guys don't do. And my senior year, I missed spring football, playing baseball, and I came back as fresh and as focused as I ever was. And I took a lot of heat because I missed spring football, but I think the people that were giving me heat didn't understand what that did for me.
I bet. And, you also see today, the concept of spring football at the collegiate level. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of backing off of that. Injury reasons. Mm-hmm. Part of it is to keep kids fresh, keep people fresh. And I think there's something to be said about that.
No question. Jerry Snodgrass, the Executive Director of the Ohio High School Athletic Association. He's our special guest here tonight on the OHSAA This Week in High School Football program with you up until 9 o'clock. We're live at the Max&Ermas here in Westerville. We'll remind you about some of the great things going on here at Max&Ermas. Don't forget the $5 knockout nachos, the $5 bartender's choice. This, of course, will come up on game day Saturday when Ohio State opens up. The free kids Sunday bar will be open with the purchase of a free kids meal, $12 for other specials as well, too. And we would love to have you stop on out. They'll have the Ohio State game on for you here Saturday as well, too. Also, don't forget Max&Ermas rolled out their fall menu on August the 27th. Some of those features include a new Asian chopped salad, the delicious French onion burger, and the return of a guest favorite, the smokehouse chicken sandwich. Also, be sure to join them here at Max&Ermas every Tuesday for Kids Eat Free, as well as Thank You Thursday, where they say thank you to the guests with $5 burgers and endless fries. For more updates, be sure to like them on Max&Ermas Westerville, and you can find them there on Facebook. During our conversation, Jerry Snodgrass, the Executive Director of the OHSAA, I mentioned how certainly probably one of the things that was at the top of your watch list last Friday was the weather, and it could not have cooperated anymore last week.
Yeah, really. That's an issue. Of course, this week, too, the heat has been such an issue. Mm-hmm. And then, that's one thing I stress about our coaches. And I was here at the association when the Ohio Department of Ed and even us got involved in requiring more education out of our coaches. But that's one thing that I can stand in front of anybody. And not to demean the travel leagues and all that. I mean, they have a purpose. But one thing I can guarantee is that every coach standing in front of our kids has proper training. And I think in today's world, with focus on whether it's concussion or other forms of life-lasting injuries, how key that is that our coaches are trained. I mean, they're trained better than anybody.
Mm-hmm. And those issues, especially these days, when they happen, they come to the forefront right away. I mean, people jump on those right away, as well they should, to bring them to the forefront. But those are, you mentioned with the coaches and the great job they do with that, they have to be in that area right now.
They do, and I think I commend our coaches. I know a lot of people don't realize how difficult coaching is. Every single
It's easy, right, guys? Coaching, right, guys? It's easy, right?
Every single coach in Ohio last weekend wanted to win. Half of them did not. And that's something when, I see all the press and the publicity, I just hope that we just keep that focus that all those coaches poured their heart out to try to win games.
And I want to go back to the weather comment because, we've done enough broadcasting. We've been involved in games on Friday nights where you get a storm come through and it's late and you get lightning and a game gets delayed, and then you're looking at, okay, what do we do? And from a coaches and an athletic department, the athletic director standpoint, that's a challenging situation logistically because now you got to play the game on Saturday, and you got JV games. I mean, can you address what that's like?
And I'm a former athletic director, so I sympathize with them. I mean, you're talking not only officials, you're talking about what do you do with that ticket person, that person that bought a ticket,
right,
that wants to come or wants their money back.
Right.
I mean, the challenges of that, let alone from security reasons where you have to hire security, the expense of doing that over 2 days. So, but the good part is I don't know of one single athletic director that would turn their back to that.
Right.
I have to add this. I have a special thing of that. You talked about my background.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've always said, and I still have the newspaper article that talks about this, I'm a lightning strike victim. I was struck by lightning when I was in high school, lived to tell about it. Doesn't happen twice.
I moved closer.
So
tell about it. Good.
So trust me, part of my passion for things is I've never forgotten a single day that the opportunity I've had to continue on. So I have a special interest in the lightning thing. When I hear of somebody that maybe has violated that a little bit, I'm not easy on them.
I don't doubt that at all. Get a couple questions coming in for you, Jerry, from our not only from our Facebook page but from our Twitter page as well too. On the lines of the weather situation, are you happy with the procedures and how they work? Is 30 minutes too long to wait sometimes?
No.
And for those who don't know, 30 minutes. If there's a lightning strike and a game is halted, you have to wait another 30 minutes before even beginning to consider the resumption of play.
Even the sight of lightning or the sound of thunder. Mm-hmm. And scientific studies show that that's necessary. And I think a lot of people don't realize that is a national rule. Every single state in the nation must follow that rule in high school. So I'm very pleased with that. And the other part of that is National Federation has one of the most extensive and detailed sport medicine advisory group. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a random thing and say, let's do this.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that's often overlooked, and maybe our poster overlooked that as well too. Just what you said, that's a national rule. It's correct. Not your rule. You're going under the NFSHA guidelines.
That's correct.
Right, exactly. Another question. Back to the health issue. You mentioned how much you praise the coaches and whatnot. Take us through the oversight though on that. What's the procedure of that?
Initially, when I came into this office 11 years ago, there really was no oversight, and it was challenging. All these rules got put in, and how do you enforce it? Mm-hmm. Well, that changed. It really is monitored by the Ohio Department of Education. And today, any athletic director is not going to take the risk of putting any individual on that field or on a court that doesn't have that proper certification. Some, if you're lucky enough in your school district, your HR coordinator does monitor it a little bit. Most people won't issue a contract today to a person unless they have their proper certification. But it is over the actual procedures and the requirements are through the Ohio Department of Ed. A certificate issued. Unfortunately, it's costly. Every coach pays $250 or so at least to be able to get on the field and has to renew that every so often anyhow.
And I want to bring up a question. We've asked this to you before, but I want to bring it up again tonight because it's I didn't understand it until we asked this. Every year you've got such a turnover in coaches. You've got so many schools, so many new head coaches, new assistant coaches that you've got to educate and inform the rules. How much of your job is taken up by that?
Were you in my interview? One of the things, and I do not mean this demeaning one bit to any of our past, but I am a former educator. And I've identified, people ask me some of the top issues that I think we face. One of the top things I said was the T, turnover. Mm-hmm. I guess that goes back to my basketball days and when we had turnovers.
Yeah,
but
no, like those offensive coordinators.
But the turnover fact is that we predict we have somewhere between 65 and 70,000 coaches in the state of Ohio. That's an unbelievable number. The turnover with that, I can't rely that any single coach on a field or on a court knows everything they're supposed to know. We all tend to do that sometimes in the education world. We have to teach from ground zero. Yes. And that's one of my biggest goals coming into this office is making certain, I'm not saying improve or anything of the sort, make certain that we've done everything we can do to educate our coaches, educate our athletic directors, and do what we need to do.
Right, because it all starts at the top and it works its way down. So Jerry Snodgrass, the executive director of the Ohio High School Athletic Association, spending some time with us. A couple of minutes left with Jerry. I wanted to hit on a couple of topics. One that jumped out at me, and you and I were talking about this before we went on the air earlier. It's open again in your neck of the woods, and a great story, which I think really a lot of times underlines some of the things that people don't realize about what high school football coaches do, what high school football teams do. There was a story in the Findlay area where a youth with cerebral palsy was bullied after joining his local high school football league team. Well, the Findlay high school team with their head coach went to visit this young man and have invited him to be on the sideline with them for Friday night's game. And Jerry, you and I were talking, that's really what this is all about when you see that kind of reaction from a high school football team to help out a young man like that.
And not only that, I think the kid was a 6th grader, I think, something like that. But to see that the reaction, I saw it on social media, and it was the parent that actually put that out there, how thrilled she was that her son, and you can just tell from the pictures of this, I mean, it brings tears to your eyes, what these football kids have done. And just as important, though, that's where I'm proud of our coaches. Our coaches are leaders teaching other kids to be leaders. And, I never want that to go unnoticed. Their job is hard enough. You've got Berlin's coach on here tonight. I don't know if I should tell him this or not, but he's got a 1-year contract. Every coach in Ohio,
I think he knows that.
They have a 1-year contract, and people don't realize that.
Right.
Unless they're full of money, he didn't sign a multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal. That is tough. To know that they do those things in addition to trying to win ball games, I'm forever grateful to them.
And it just shows you, yes, wins are big, obviously, but it's not all about the wins.
It is not, and I think that's the great thing about school-sponsored sports.
Absolutely. Another thing I want to get your thoughts on. I know you can't really regulate things like this, but I saw a story today where I think it's Coleraine and LaSalle will end their series after this year, and that's a rather long-running Southwest Ohio series. I know in Southeastern Ohio, Jackson and Wellston will no longer play after the 2019 season, and that's a rivalry that dates back over 100 years. I mean, they've been playing. It's one of the longest rivalries in the state of Ohio. Of course, there's so many great rivalries that we know will continue. Massillon, Canton, McKinley, Sandusky, Fremont, Ross is a very long rivalry. There's some big rivalries. I know you can't step in and say, hey, we want you to play, but I know you hate to see those kind of things go away.
You sure do. I'm an Upper Sandusky grad and long-time Northern Ohio League, Bellevue, Shelby. I mean, it was forever, and it no longer exists. It was one of the oldest conferences in Ohio. What's amazing about Ohio is the demographics have changed so much. You take the industrial towns, the steel towns of Lima, Marion, Fremont, Sandusky, those industrial-based towns were, at one time, large Division I schools. I coached at Ridgedale High School, and in the 1980s, we played Olentangy, the only school that existed, and they were a AA farm school. Wow. I mean, a rural school. Now, who'd have thunk that? You know what I mean? So it's just interesting, and by virtue of that, it's real difficult to get involved in it. The state of Kansas creates the schedules for every single school in the state. They also hire the officials for every single school in the state. In other words, their central office does. Well, the difference is, I'm not sure how many teams they have. We have almost 800. We have 814 members, and it makes it almost impossible. We're in Section 2, it's called, in the NFHS and the divisions. I've got a meeting coming up with the Delaware executive director. We have more teams in a league than they do in their entire state. He invited his entire staff to this meeting, his staff of two. So you can see we have some unique issues in Ohio that almost keep us from doing that. But I hate to see them go too.
How would you like to generate schedules for all these schools? How would you like to do that?
I think some people would like us to. But I'm like you, though. I love the tradition. It's also nice to see some of these schools that have not played for many, many years also get back together and play for the first time. I believe it's Troy and Xenia are playing this weekend. That's a big thing that before they wouldn't have. But again, some of those large schools have shrunk in size and some of the smaller ones have grown. Makes it more feasible to do.
I was looking back at some of those rivalries today, doing some research for this. Troy and Piqua, by the way, that's a huge rivalry. The games date back to 1899. That series is dead even. 62 wins apiece with 6 ties.
Wow.
62 wins
Wow.
apiece. Yeah, they'll play. I don't think it's the last game of the season, but it's either the midway point or it is the last game. They kind of rotate every year in the schedule, so which I thought was very interesting. That series, as heated as that rivalry is, that thing's dead even right down the middle.
Wow.
62
Wow.
wins
You hate to see that ever end, too.
No, I don't think they're in the
Right.
same league, so
Right.
fortunately that will continue in two schools about the same size. Some other great ones, Worcester and Orrville. That's a long-time running rivalry. Dover, New Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
It's the 100th meeting back in 2004. So it's great to see those games continue.
Well, I saw last weekend in the opening week, Defiance and Napoleon, big rival between the two. And in fact, when you mention these, so many of them have something tied to them. Like they call it the rock, the river rock
Right.
up there. So what do? They present this river rock. Now, what's the value of that river rock taken out of the Maumee River?
Right.
You know what? There's a source of pride with it. It's really neat. It's really neat.
The Maumee River rivalry game.
Yep.
Yeah, that's Napoleon and Defiance. We appreciate you spending some time with us. I know you've had a busy day and you've got a drive ahead of you, but we thank you for coming down here tonight.
Thank you. I really appreciate this and really appreciate you having the coaches on tonight and everything you're doing for high school. It's so unique and so great in Ohio.
Well, we're excited about it, and we're looking forward to this continuing.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank
Jerry
you so much.
Snodgrass, Executive
Thank you.
Director of the OHSAA, joining us. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll speak to some of those coaches after this time out. We're at the Max&Ermas in Westerville. More here on EBSN coming up shortly.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between two great teams and two passionate fan bases. This season, join Germain Honda of Dublin and Germain Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Germain Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference in your game.
So with the quarterback, Greg Frey. We continue on our program tonight. We're focusing on week number 2 of the high school football season. And joining us now at our center microphone here is the head coach at Westerville South, Matt Christ, is with us here this evening. First of all, Coach, thank you for coming down and spending some time with us here this evening. I'll ask you to move a little closer into the mic. I know week 1 was week 1 for you, but that's every coach in America will tell you teams get better between week 1 and week 2, and I know you're looking forward to that out of your team this week.
Yeah, so we had a really good offseason entering my second year here at Westerville South, and I can tell you from a group perspective, coaching staff, players, it was a frustrating start to the year. Not taking anything away from New Albany. They're a good program. They're a winning program. But if you lose the turnover battle 4-0, it's probably going to be a long night every night that happens. So we're looking forward to bouncing back. That's a beautiful thing about life in the game of football in the regular season anyhow. You're going to play the next Friday night, and I know Worthington Kilbourne doesn't care about that,
Right.
the fact that we didn't win last Friday night, so we're back to work.
And what kind of approach you take with the guys? I mean, I've seen coaches you can get real frustrated and really take it out on your guys. You can say, hey, you know what, it's week 1. These are correctable mistakes. What was your message to your team over the weekend?
Yeah, so the biggest thing this week that we're really focusing on is consistency. Controlling the things that we can control. Ball security is one of those things. And just really, making sure we understand what our assignments are, alignment, controlling those controllables, moving forward.
the type of schedule that you play, and you knew walking into this, if you're in the OCC, crossover games, league games, you know every Friday night if you do those things, chances are it's going to be a rough night for you. And I think maybe this league more than any other, it exposes weaknesses, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure. Everybody you play, you don't look at your schedule preseason and say, okay, I feel pretty good about any. I mean, you better show up and play well every Friday night to give yourself an opportunity to be there in the fourth quarter and down the stretch. So there's no doubt about it. But that's the exciting thing about coaching in the OCC is that competitive, atmosphere week in and week out.
It's unique, the situation you step into, a program that's had some success, has had some talent, but has kind of found itself trying to get back to that level again. Take me through the aspect of trying to do that. Not that you're rebuilding a program, but you're trying to get it back where it was 5 years ago or 4 years ago. Just obviously you had a plan going into it. Just take us through that.
Sure. So the year before I came in, they went 1-9, which is obviously that's a long year. That's a rough year. So you walk in, you evaluate where you think things are currently at. We put a program in place to try to attack, I would say, the greatest needs at the start of the year last year. Hired late doesn't help, but I thought we made great strides in terms of discipline and just behaviors that I think you have to have in order to be successful as a football program. And then, really after last year, sitting down with our rising upperclassmen and really asking them, what characteristics do you want this 2018 team to have, and giving them a voice in that, and the commitment to the weight room, and just the summer and so forth, I think has paid off big time. So
I've been part of walking into two programs like that where you're taking over and you're changing mentality. Where do you feel like you're at in that process of as a coach, you've got to sell your guys on your deal, on your program.
Yep.
Where do you feel like you're at in that process after year one, entering year two?
Yeah, like I said, the off season I was really, really happy with the buy-in, the weight room. Obviously that's where you develop a lot of the skills you're going to take into the season. You're not developing anything after the off season in terms of strength, speed, and so forth. So I was very happy with that process. I really feel as a program we got buy-in, and we're at that kind of that fork in the road that if we start winning, you know what I mean, it kind of validates everything we've been doing, and that's really where we're at. So we got to find a way to put together 4 quarters and then win some football games.
Matt Chris, the head coach of Westerville South, with us here at Max&Ermas on this Wednesday evening. It's our second week of the high school football preview show. We're glad you're with us. Questions or comments, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter, at GregFry15. I'm at Marty Bannister, and you can also hit us up on our EBSN page at EBSN online as well, too. It's unique these days, Matt, where I'm old enough to remember the OCC when it was just 8 schools, and Westerville was the school in the league. Now, obviously, 3 schools. Olentangy has 4, Hilliard has 3, Dublin has 3. Talk about some of the challenges of coaching in a district like that where you have 3 schools all within yelling distance of one another, so to speak, and just the ability to try to get your program going, knowing there are other 2 guys within 3 miles doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, I don't want to get myself in too much trouble here, but I think one of the big challenges, and maybe something that at some point we address as a district, a lot of schools that we play at least have an idea, middle school wise, who's coming there.
Right.
We don't really find out until late March, early April. So just that.
That has to make it hard to prepare then.
Yes. I mean, just in terms of you really don't know. So it's not like I get to walk down to a middle school and say, hey, this is our terminology. You know what I mean? Here's fundamental stuff. Coach Morrison's been good. Coach Morrison and I put on kind of a youth clinic, a middle school clinic. So at least some of our terminology hopefully is getting carried down there. Because again, as Westerville football, regardless of where kids end up, I do feel like we're a little bit behind the 8 ball compared to some of these districts that can walk down to the middle school and kind of lay out their program from down there.
So back to this week, you got a big game obviously against Kilbourne. When you look at them on film, what do you see? What are your concerns, or what do you see about them that impresses you?
They have a pretty explosive running back. That he got loose several times last week against Olentangy Orange. He's slippery. He does some good things, and if you get it into space, he can run for a while. They have a tall quarterback. He runs the ball hard as well, can throw, make all the throws. They seem physical up front. I've got a lot of respect for Coach Trombetti, so I know that those kids are going to play hard for him. No doubt about it.
That's another one of those names, Coach Trombetti. He's been around for a long time, and you know his teams, they don't change. I mean, the names do, but nothing else does.
Nope. They're going to line up right. They're going to give you everything they got for 4 quarters, and that's a reflection of him and what he's been able to accomplish.
And I get the sense, and I've been in your shoes after week 1 where you're like, we got to get our act together. How much of your focus is on taking care of your own business versus
100%?
You respect them, right?
Yes.
You got an opponent, but we got to take care of our own stuff.
Yep. Well, like I said, consistency this week's been the message, and controlling the things we can control. You got to take care of the football. You got to get out of your own way to give yourself a chance to be successful.
Take us through some of your leaders. Obviously, that's what you're counting on right now. After you drop an opener, you look to those guys to kind of rally the troops, so to speak. Tell us about some of those guys.
Sure, yeah. So our team captains, Michael Mansoray is a junior. Tobby Falls is a senior. Jason Penn, our quarterback, is a senior. And then we have a nucleus. I would say as a group, this is a much tighter group than was in the past. Just in terms of, I think they really care about each other. I think that's a big piece of winning football games. Football, it's a great team sport, but you got 11 guys that need to be selfish in their individual responsibility, and sometimes those responsibilities aren't very sexy. You know what I mean? You still got to take great pride in trying your best to execute. When you got a group of guys that care about each other, I think that the chances of those, things getting executed on a more consistent basis are a much higher percentage.
Did you sense after last week that those guys kind of brought everybody together? Or maybe you might even have seen it, that, hey guys, week 1 now is done. Let's get better week 2.
Yeah, I think in the past, like last year, I think we would have hit the panic button big time. Like, here we go again. And I didn't feel that. And the way that we practiced on Monday, on Tuesday, and the practice that we did get in before the weather, I think that shows signs of maturity as a program. That we understand the work that has to be put into it to get the desired outcome.
Matt Chris, the head coach of Westerville South, with us here at Max&Ermas on this Wednesday evening, talking high school football. Week number 2, his Wildcats play Worthington-Kilbourne on Friday night. You touched on it a moment ago, 1-9 a couple of seasons ago, and perhaps the toughest thing is the mentality of changing that and trying to get kids to forget. You just said a moment ago, last year things we might have hit the panic button. Is that one of the hardest things you have to do in this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think mentality is a big part of it. Culture is a buzzword that we all throw around in the coaching community. But I think Bill Walsh said, and before you become a champion, you have to behave like a champion. And I think that, it doesn't ring any truer than that. The way you prepare Saturday through Thursday, in my mind, is what's setting the stage to give yourself an opportunity to hopefully be successful. Because every team we play, as we just talked about, they're good. And you better play your best football for 4 quarters to have a shot.
And I get the sense, you mentioned your leaders, and you're talking to them about their buy-in, and it seems to be you're giving them a lot of ownership of that with the team. And I like that. Where you need their ownership, right?
Yeah,
as far
absolutely.
as you got to have their buy-in in the locker room, because if they're not bought in, you got a problem. But it sounds like if you got solid leaders, they're the ones that can step up in that situation and kind of have to. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, in an ideal world, your best football players are also your best leaders, and I feel like we're much closer to that this year. And I think that those kids, they take ownership like you talked about. It's important to them. And they're willing to own up. We didn't play well week 1. Yeah. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's get to work and get ready for week 2.
Right.
When you see that and the way the kids react to things, and we'd all agree with this. You're still a relatively young guy. Kids are different these days. You have to be I don't want to say psychologist, but you have to go a little deeper, I think, to really get these kids to maybe step forward and do things like that.
Yeah. So, kids are still kids, I think.
Right.
But social media, there's a lot of different things. We live in a society, whether they're young kids or adults, that we want immediate gratification. We want things the way we want them right now. And I think that is the challenge, is that at times, often is the case in life, you got to do a bunch of work and at times not really reap any reward before you kind of turn that corner and have bigger success for yourself.
Question coming in for you, Coach, on our Twitter page, wanting to know your thoughts on winning the Ville, so to speak. Is, I guess, kind of the mindset in Westerville with Central and North as well, too. That's kind of the bragging rights thing.
Sure, yep. So I can tell you right now we're focused on Kilbourne for week 2.
No question.
But, yeah, I would say, preseason, when we talk about goals, that's something that we always want to try to accomplish, There's like your other brothers in your family. You want to beat everybody, so there's no doubt that we're looking forward to those opportunities against North and Central and taking our best crack at both of them.
Are those games good? I mean, in the overall perspective, I mean, because you see leagues are realigned, where the OCC is going to realign here in a couple of years, and some of these natural rivals are going to be in different divisions now.
Yeah, I know as a district that was important to us as we were scheduling. Our non-league North will still be with us when it realigns, but we wanted to make sure that we kept Central as a cross or a non-league game, because I do think it's great for the community. It kind of highlights a lot of great young athletes, and just it's a good overall community event.
For those who maybe not have seen your team play, take it style-wise. Offensively, what do you like to do? Defensively, what do you like to do?
Offensively, we're spread, so typically one back, we'll go empty. We run a lot of quick game, quick throws, jet option. Our quarterback's definitely a viable running threat. So just trying our best week in and week out to create advantageous situations based upon what teams we think are going to line up to our stuff in.
And Greg knows from his playing days and how that's changed the game a lot, I think, especially at the high school level.
Well, and I was going to ask the next question. A lot of what's changed is the RPOs, where quarterbacks are making a read in the midst of a play of whether they're going to run it or throw it. I'm guessing you guys that's part of what you do, or a big part of what you do.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, in my mind, though, so it's an extension of old school option.
Right, absolutely.
We're still optioning somebody. They're just not on the line of scrimmage.
Right.
They're second or third level defenders.
So. And that amazes me. I mean, I've really studied this. I mean, because you ultimately as a coach, you want to get into the best play.
Yep.
In a lot of cases, years back was doing that before the snap, reading a defense, making the change pre-snap, making it verbally, and now a lot of that's just visual after the snap, which is amazing. And it's just I watch these young quarterbacks make these reads, and it really blows my mind. It's almost like playing a video game because they've got to do it over and over and get a feel for that. But it's impressive how they do that. But it does take a lot of reps.
Yep, it does. And with young, I mean, at any level, the best college quarterbacks, they're going to make mistakes at times. So when you're running RPOs, you got to live with a little bit of that. So
you do.
Absolutely. Your background, your second year as the head football coach at Westerville South. When you got the head coaching job, obviously that's what you want to be as a head football coach. Anybody you relied on for guidance, or did you call anybody to kind of say, hey, well, take me through this. What do I do? How do I get this started?
I would say my college position coach, who's the quarterback coach up at Baldwin Wallace, he's kind of a big brother to me. He had been a head coach at the Division III level and moved on to Baldwin Wallace. So he's always somebody that I just feel very comfortable having those conversations with. I'm coming up from Grandview Heights. So Ray Corbett, because I also coach basketball, I just have a very close relationship with him. He's somebody just from more of an organizational type questions, not necessarily football related, that I feel good about. And then Ed Kalo at South has been tremendous in terms of just somebody that bounce things off of, support. I feel really good. We obviously are coaching the same kids. So he's been an awesome sounding board for sure. It's
your second year, and this is the first time we've met, but I get the impression that you're excited each and every day when you walk in the building, when you walk into the practice field, about what this program can do.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to build a program, so I'm not planning on going anywhere. I know that there's, as we talked about, there's hurdles to overcome and trials and tribulations, but you got a choice each day when you wake up to either attack it or not, and we're here attacking it again today.
Talk about your staff. Let's give some love to your assistant coaches here. How many guys did you bring in versus guys you kept? And what are the dynamics of your staff?
So this year I feel our coaching staff is a much tighter group. I've done a lot of things. The freshmen practice with us, so all of our coaches are platoon, whereas all of our players practice both offense and defense. I think that's done a lot of things for program growth. In a year or two, I think that's going to pay off big time. That a freshman and sophomores been getting varsity coaching from the guy that they're going to hear for the next couple years. I brought Mike Tobin and Evan Smith with me from Grandview. So I've known Mike for close to 10 years now. His daughter's godfather, so there's a neat relationship in that respect. Coach Duncan, Zip Duncan, he came over from Dublin Jerome. He coaches at Heritage Middle School, so he's our defensive coordinator. He does a great job. The only guy I kept on staff was Eric Cowan, he's a South graduate. He's a guy that you could tell, when Coach Stout had resigned, and it was a pretty long search, and that whole process was a guy that was really keeping the weight room alive, keeping kids in there lifting, and to me that spoke volumes. Sure. And that's important to him, and sure. South is important to him.
Sure.
As much as the players getting on the same page, you bring in these guys that that made that step so much easier too, because you guys are all on the same page.
Yeah, so I mean, anytime, every staff that I've been on, new staff, there's kind of this feeling out process. So, you know, it's nice to be able to look over and say, like, what are we doing here today? You know what I mean?
Right.
There's no, you don't feel like you're walking on eggshells at all. So that definitely speeds things up for sure.
Has to make it easier to practice too.
Yeah. I feel like our practice structure right now is pretty efficient. You know, you only you can't practice for 4 hours, right? So you got to get a lot of work in. You got kids playing both sides of the ball. So I feel pretty good about how we're practicing and the structure and how efficient we are being.
Matt Chris, the head coach at Westerville South. We appreciate you coming down. Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Good luck this
When
week.
we come back, we'll talk to another first-year Central Ohio head coach, Mark Norrie from Olentangy Berlin will join us when we return after this timeout. We're at Max&Ermas here in Westerville and on EBSN. Stay with us. More coming up.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between two great teams and two passionate fan bases. This season, join Germain Honda of Dublin and Germain Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Germain Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference to your game.
In Westerville, it's week number 2 of the Ohio High School League Association High School Football Preview Show, along with the quarterback, Greg Frey. I'm Marty Bannister. We're so glad you're with us tonight. The folks here at Max&Ermas are certainly enjoying the great food here tonight, and thanks to the folks here, always great hosts. We appreciate all that they do for us and all that they're doing for all the folks out here tonight, who no doubt are having a great time here at Max&Ermas, enjoying the fine food here. We invite you to stop on out. We're here every Wednesday from 7 to 9. We understand the desserts are very good as too. The banana, coconut.
Just ask Aaron.
Yeah, just ask Aaron Cassidy.
Yes.
What was that? The banana? What'd you have? Banana cream
Banana
pie.
cream
Yeah,
pie.
he looked like George Costanza from that sign.
Yes, he did.
Had it all over his face.
I was having a hard time
It was a
focusing
mess.
watching him.
It
Just
was a mess. It really
burying
was.
that thing.
And that just tells you how good it is when you dive into something like that. So here at Max&Ermas in Westerville, 7 to 9 every Wednesday is where you'll find us. Fridays at Olentangy Berlin is where you'll find this gentleman, the head coach at Olentangy Berlin, Mark Norrie, joining us here. It's great to have him here with us. First questions first. Is it Berlin or Berlin?
Berlin.
Berlin. Okay,
Yes.
like Northeast Ohio's Berlin Highland High School.
I suppose so. Okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
All right.
to
Well,
me.
I know that was a question that was been asked a lot, but
Yeah,
there
the
you-
accent's on Burr.
Okay.
Berlin.
All right.
So,
All right.
Yep.
You had a lot of success in Northeast Ohio as a head coach. Great program at Stowe. A lot of talent up there. To take over a first-year program in a district that I'm going to move this a little bit closer to you here.
Okay.
A first-year program in a district that's just. Well, let's face it, it's almost a gold mine of talent right now. Take us through the decision process to take this job.
Well, I think when they first contacted me about the job, you know, we sat down and talked about it as a family. So it had to work on 2 levels for us. It had to work on a professional level, and it had to work on the personal level. And so, you know, obviously when you go through the district and you look at what they have, it's a once-in-a-lifetime shot professionally for me. So that was a no-brainer. You know, you turn around and you talk to the family, and everybody knows a happy wife is a happy life. So
Got that right.
yeah, so we had to get that settled, and she was all on board from the very beginning. So it was really an easy sell for them, and it was easy accept for me. So it's been good.
Have you been through a situation like this before where you've had to build a program from scratch?
Not from scratch. When I got to Stowe, there was one winning season in 25 years. So it was more of a hole that they had dug. It was a deeper hole than I thought they had dug, to be honest with you. But so we had to get out of that hole first to get back to even, and then start building again from there. So in this situation, we're already on a level playing field. There's no hole there to dig. So it's just me building it up from the ground up. So.
And when you say there's no hole there because they don't have a history of winning or losing. It's just you're creating that for them.
That's right. Yeah, and like I said, for a coach, that's a dream come true. I mean, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I was just so fortunate that I was on one of the candidates for the list, and I'm just so excited to be here. So it's been good.
Well, I've seen your success over the last couple of years. I've seen the Stowe program, taken to new heights, obviously, and I've watched your team in the playoffs. I've been in the broadcast booth and been so impressed with that. So. I'm very confident you're going to do well here.
Thank you.
Go back. You mentioned, at Stowe, there was such a long history of not winning. Mm-hmm. What was that process like in the first couple of years to turn that around? Because you got to change the mentality of teaching kids how to win.
Complete culture change from the ground up, and they had done so many things for such a long time that every time I tried to change something, it was going to be different. And, there was a little bit of pushback there on some issues. Other things, we just went ahead. But the bottom line was the way things were being done were a losing way for so long. So, I really feel like I had great mentors. I've been involved with Tom Coughlin and Bill Cowher and guys like that. And so I took a little bit of each of their philosophies. I mean, they're Super Bowl winning coaches, so they know what they're doing. And so a lot of the things that I've developed at the high school level come from them and their philosophies. And so it has to be adjusted a little bit to the high school level. But when you get down to it and you start getting the kids in the right frame of mind, and you can change that culture, it just takes a little bit of time.
Mark Norrie, the head coach at Olentangy Berlin, with us here as we talk high school football here on this Wednesday, week number 2 of our program, week number 2 of the high school football season. We'll talk about Berlin's next game coming up here shortly. I want to get back, though, to the program building aspect of all this. And Greg touched on the comment you made about digging out of the hole at Stowe. Mm-hmm. Well, here you come into a program where the kids you got who came into your program came all from winning programs. Mm-hmm. So that mentality was already there for these players. That had to help you when you first took a ball to the practice field.
No question. I think the biggest thing that we have to worry about, and I said this the other day, I mean, it's like free agency on steroids with us because we just got everybody from a different program. So they've all had a different philosophy. They've all had a different head coach. They've all had success. So that piece, that winning piece, they know how to do. The biggest thing is the combination of those kids and becoming one as a family, and now at Berlin. So, that's been the focal point since we've met back February, March, and we had our head coaches meeting and all those types of things with parents and all that kind of stuff. And so just kind of doing it our way. We've had to undo a little bit, if you will, just because we don't have any seniors, so our oldest classes are juniors. And so some of those guys have been doing things for 3 years a certain way, and now we're going to ask them to do it a different way. But that's sort of the growing pains a little bit and the learning curve that you have to go through to get everybody on board in the direction you want to get going.
And for those people that are watching that maybe don't know, what was that process like as far as how were the kids divvied up in the district with the new school?
That's a great question because I still can't figure out how they divvy up the kids in the district. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. We were trying to find a house, my wife and I, and we couldn't figure out if we were going to be in the district or out of the district every time. And so we were hiring realtors and they were trying to figure it out. We were calling the school. We had all kinds of stuff going on. So we landed in the district, fortunately for us, and that was something we really wanted to do because I believe in the visibility of a head coach, and so I wanted to be around where the kids were going to be and those types of things. But we were coming down on weekends, doing some house shopping and so forth, while at the same time showing our house. So we had a lot going on, and we never knew you cross the street and you're out of the district all of a sudden. And so and I think it's still kind of formulating itself. But that's. I'd like to know the answer to that self. So when you guys figure that out, let me. That's what I said. I got enough kids. I'm good to go.
Well, I'm sure.
Quite frankly, football coaches really don't care about that kind of stuff. We just want to go coach football.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure you heard Coach Chris from Westerville South a short time ago talk about the district like yours, multiple high schools, where you simply can't walk down to the middle school and take your program with you when you go in the front door. I would gather you're in the same type of situation in Olentangy.
Yeah, we have 5 middle schools. schools, and we don't have a one feeder school per se. So, in fact, we were talking about that on the way over, exactly how that's going to look. I still think we're in the process of growth, so those things are changing all the time, and it's very fluid as we go throughout the years. There's not an end result here tonight, but I think that that's going to change as we move forward.
All right, you got your opener last week. You went to Briggs or played Briggs and knocked them off 53-22. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
53-22. With all the things you're trying to do, and you win your opener, regardless of the level of competition you were playing last Friday. And I'm not taking anything away from Briggs. That's a program that it has struggled a little bit in the City League, no question about it. But you still came out. You won the football game. What did that do overall for you, for the program, for the kids, for everybody involved with your program?
Well, I think the excitement that it generated in the community has just been unbelievable. And we've had a heck of a backing from everybody, from parents to teachers to administrators, and just the entire community came out that night. And really, it was a win for the district, not just for the football team, because the support that we had that night, we hadn't played like we wanted to play in the first couple of preseason games, but that night, for whatever reason, the switch flicked, and the kids came out and they played and they did a great job. And I think that backing of the students and just everybody in the community really they just went out and played football. I mean, it was really nice to see. We had thought we had taken gradual steps in the preseason, but when they stood up on Friday night, I never told you we'd score 50 points on Friday night. And so that's a credit to our kids and a credit to our community that they came out and showed like that. It was awesome.
Now the flip side of that is getting their attention week 2 after they win week 1 sometimes. What was the focus after that game? Hey guys, you did a great job, but we got to get better week 2.
Yeah, I enjoy it for about 20 minutes. I let the kids enjoy it for about 24 hours, and then we go right back to work. But and it's like I said, we had one kid on that team that played in a varsity game before that night, and so that was really that was our varsity. It was the first time a lot of our kids had varsity experience, so it was nice to get a taste of some success, and I think the kids enjoyed that a lot. We've noticed a little bit of difference at practice in terms of preparation and those types of things, and they're really starting to figure out now how this thing works. So just building off of that, I think that type of win can help those types of things. But at the same time, we know who we are, and we know that, like Coach Chris alluded to, we have the same issue. We're not worried about who's across the ball from us right now. We're worried about what's going on internally and trying to get this thing right that way, and then we can worry about those other things.
You mentioned something that's always appealed to me and been a challenge for me as a coach is teaching young men how to practice and how to prepare. From your perspective, how challenging is it as a coach to get them to really pay attention Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to be prepared for Friday night? Extremely.
And I would also submit to that too, that the fact that we don't have any true seniors who have done it for 4 years, we've just told the kids if sooner or later they're going to have to take that piece of it over. But right now it's us coaches that are kind of pulling it out of them. And so you can tell when the program starts to turn the corner a little bit is when you have kids on the field that are just taking it over for you. And so we're waiting to see that. I don't know that it's happened yet, but we don't have captains. We have weekly captains. Okay. So we use that as incentive for the kids to say, hey, you have a great week of practice, and you'll walk out on the field. We don't care if you're a freshman, sophomore, or junior. You're going to walk out there and represent our team because you had a great week of practice. So that's kind of the approach we've been taking.
I had a question for you off my Twitter account, wanting to know, Coach, about coming into a district like this with the amount of success the other schools have had. Do you have a timetable?
No, I don't think so. I just talked to my AD, Mr. Betts. He's sitting over there, and he told me I have a multi-year contract. So I'm real excited about that.
All right.
So I wanted to put that out publicly so everybody knows that is now public.
All the pressure's on you now.
Yeah, it's 2018, 2019
that's
what
right.
it is.
Multi-year, that's right.
Multi-year.
What's funny is we're in such an age where kids are so different year in and year out, and to put a timetable on it, I don't know if that's fair to me or to the kids or to the district, to be honest with you. I know that, it can be done, and it all depends on how this whole thing formulates. We're a little bit behind the 8 ball, so to speak, because of the no seniors, but at the same time, I think I can say this pretty safely that we'll probably be the only team returning everybody we have this year. So when you look at it that way, you have 10 weeks at 4 practices a week. That's 40 practices plus preseason. You're looking at probably 50 or 60 practices that they'll have under their belt for the next year, and we get all those kids back. So that's the bright side of all this. So, and that's what we're looking forward to.
No question. Mark Norrie, the head coach of Olentangy Berlin, with us here. His club opened up last week with a win. They defeated Briggs by the final of 53-22, and they'll be back in action this Friday. We'll talk more about that coming up in a couple of moments. Johnny Spinner, is that how it's pronounced, the last name?
Yep.
5 touchdowns last week.
Yeah.
Talk about that young man's play.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, you know, he plays both sides of the ball for us. So, and at this point, we have a lot of guys that do that. But, you know, Johnny plays both sides of the ball, and we tried to pull him a couple times, and he's one of those guys that just keeps telling us he doesn't want to come off the field. And I think he ended up cramping in the third or fourth quarter because we had kept him out there so long. But did a great job. You know, we just kept, like I said, just kept feeding him the ball. And, you know, I still coach the offensive line, so I got to give those guys a little bit of a plug. They did a great job up front. But really, that extends, and that's sort of the highlight that we make to the team, and we make sure they understand that. When I addressed the team about Johnny was named Player of the Week, and so you know, that's not just Johnny. That's not just the varsity guys. It's, you know, we don't call them scout teams. We call them challenge team guys. They're going to challenge us every day to be better, and that's their win too. So really, those type of individual awards become a unit award for the entire program, and so we're proud to have that.
And for everybody watching, you mentioned something about you got a lot of guys going both ways.
Mm-hmm.
How challenging is that from a practice standpoint? Because you have limited time.
Absolutely.
You totally have limited time, so that you have to maximize every minute of practice. How do you guys handle that?
Well, not only that, but you also have to worry about, you know, when you're putting a 250-pound junior up against, you know, a 180-pound freshman, you got to be careful about stuff like that too. So the looks you're getting may not always be the looks that you're going to see on Friday night as well. So, but you know, I feel I've hired a tremendous staff, and we collaborate quite often on stuff like that. We put things together, and really day to day we try to go and see exactly where our team is and exactly what the need is for the next day. Example, and you guys talked about it earlier, yesterday was a hot and humid day, and you know, I thought it would be a disservice to put the kids out there in anything but full pads, because we have acclimatization, and so they're going to have to play in weather like that. The flip side to that is, you know, we don't need to condition. We can water them down more, those types of things. So we really try to take care of that, and we monitor that on a daily basis.
Right. And it's kind of it is what it is right now. I mean, you're limited numbers wise. You know, you don't have a senior class. You know, that's just what you have to deal with.
It's awesome, isn't it? I mean, where else would you rather be? I mean, come on.
So,
I mean, that's the challenge of a coach, right? So let's add more challenges to a coach, right?
You get me fired up. So
yes.
That leads me to another question.
Okay.
Because I know my answer to this, but I want to hear yours.
All right.
Is it more fun during the week in practice than Friday night for you?
Well,
personally?
we've always believed, yeah. I mean, you know, and one of the reasons I still stay with the offensive line is because I don't want to lose my hand in coaching. You know, too many times the head coaching role has become, you know, more of an administrative type role, and I don't want to lose that piece of it. So, yeah, we do. We believe that the games are won during the week, and Friday night should be fun. We make all our mistakes, you know, Saturday through Thursday, and then when we go out Friday, we just go and play hard. So, but you know, as far as the coaching piece is concerned, for me particularly, the best part of my day is when we take that field and we coach those kids, and then that's just awesome. So, it's a good time.
I talked to Matt Christ about this a short time ago. I want to get your thoughts on this. Coming into, again, a district like this where you have 3 other high schools all within almost equal distance of you right now, and the rivalries they're naturally there. You know it, with the Olentangy schools. Sure. What are your thoughts on that type of thing? Do you like those type of games, those intra-district rivalries? Are they at a point now where maybe folks need to dial it down a little bit? Just what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's what makes Friday night fun. You know, I mean, right now there's a lot of familiarity with our kids because they've come from those other schools, and so I think that you know, just you can tell the difference in a practice when you're going to play a rivalry game as opposed when you're not. When I first started at Stowe, we were playing some teams that were up towards Cleveland, like Elyria. Those practices, we had to pull it out of them, you know what I mean? But when we played Cuyahoga Falls, or we played Hudson, or we played a team that was bordering us, I mean, we were ready to go, and it was a big difference. So I think the kids enjoy it just as much as the coaches enjoy it, just as much as the community and the fans enjoy it. So, and I think that's what makes football special, especially in the state of Ohio.
No question. Those rivalries are everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
In the state.
Yeah,
it's really remarkable. Yeah, it's. I think those games. I think sometimes fans look at them and maybe think that it's better for everybody if schools in the same district don't play one another for various and sundry reasons. I'm like you, though. I think you're in a district, you should play your district opponents.
Yeah.
I understand your situation. You can't really roll right out right away and take out all three for obvious reasons right now, but down the line, I mean, I think those are great games for the community, I think.
Absolutely. And I don't think sports is still competitive. So, and that's the competitive nature of it right there. So why not compete against the people that are right next door to you and have a little fun with it? And, it's good stuff.
Absolutely.
He and I have worked together a long time. I was going to challenge the question, like, how's he supposed to know what it's like playing the Olentangy schools when he hasn't played again?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But you handled it well. You handled it professionally, but I'll get him on that later. So what are the goals for your season? What's
get better each week. Just get better each week. Yeah, and I think one of the things that people don't realize sometimes, and I talk about this a lot internally, is the strides that we take day to day and week to week aren't seen by the people on the outside. Anybody. That could be anybody, and that's because they're just not spending time with these kids. And so we see the constant growth that we're having and the constant work ethic that we're building and things that are going in the right direction for us. And so that may not equate to wins on Friday night right now. Right. But it's the foundation that we talked about earlier in terms of building a program and all those types of things. And so, as long as we have continued growth and we're headed in the right direction and we tweak every little thing. I mean, it's not just the on-the-field stuff. It's the off-the-field stuff as well, and the expectations that we have in the classroom and in the community and those types of things. And we're teaching all that. I'm a big believer that, if you have good character and you're a good citizen, then you're going to be a good football team. But until you have those first two things, you can't have the third. So we spend a lot of time as a football program talking about just being a good student and a good citizen.
Since Greg wants to try to dictate the conversation, I'm going to take this a different direction here.
Welcome to our world. This is like Friday night, though. Okay. When you're recording it and you got a head coach telling your ear, no, call this, call it. No, I'm calling this. No, you call this. You ever have one of those?
Oh yeah.
You done? Okay. Friday night, Canal Winchester. Mm-hmm. After your week 1 victory, everybody says every team gets better week 1 to week 2. Talk to me about Friday night.
Well, so it'll be our first test as a road team. So we haven't gone on the road yet other than scrimmages, which, is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So we have to travel. So that'll be a little bit different for us. They're a really well-rounded team. They got, big guys where they need big guys and skilled guys where they need skilled guys. So I think our staff has done a good job of game planning this week, and we've worked hard in practice, but they're definitely going to be a next level opponent for us that we probably haven't seen this type of team yet. So incredibly well coached, and they do things right, and so I think they have 8 returning starters on defense, and the guys in the front are been around for three varsity letters, I think they have. So they're a pretty good football team, and it'll be a challenge for us.
From a film standpoint, how much time this week are you spending on them versus you?
Well, other than this meeting here, every waking moment. So, but no, we spend a lot of time on film and studying our opponent and those types of things. I think at this point, not only showing our kids how to play football, but showing them how to prepare and study for a team is important as well. And we do utilize our film quite a bit for studying purposes. So,
do you do group film study, or do you? I'm assuming you do as a team. You do some group film study, but do you also delegate to them and expect them to do it on their own?
Yeah, we do a little bit of both. I think with the advent of technology and how things have come along, you can send clips home now and kids can watch them. Not a big fan of that, never have been. I think if, and you'll watch kids in your meeting room and they'll look and they'll go, ooh, look at that guy with that hit, or look at that guy. And they're looking at everything they should be looking at, right. First of all. Second of all, I think the constant coaching that has to go on and the constant interaction between player and coach, I don't ever want to lose that. So do we send some stuff out for the kids to watch? Yes. It's expected of them to know certain things. They sort of have that checklist ahead of them so they know what to look for. We try to focus it in. But when we're at school as well, we do a lot of film study there too. So,
and that's a good point you make. As far as you have to teach guys how to watch film and where to look.
Absolutely,
there's an art to that because it's so easy to follow football and not be paying attention to things you need to see. It's easy to get distracted, so that takes time. Doesn't
yes,
it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and like you guys mentioned earlier, we we're building from the ground up. I mean, I forgot to get whiteboards for the sideline. You know, I had to order those, and those are just things that people have in their equipment room that you
just
think
take
you
for
have,
granted.
you take for granted.
Right.
And so, but even down to what you're talking about, even the mentality of the kids and the way you want things done, it's almost like you basically just have to tell them. You know, and some things you would think would be assumed, they aren't, you know, and so we really are truly building from the ground up.
I don't think there's any question. Old Tangy Berlin's in good hands with Mark Norrie, the head football coach. Won their opener last week. They play at Canal Winchester this Friday night, one of the many, many games that certainly we'll be keeping track of for you all throughout this week here on EBSN and elsewhere, GBSN as well, too, as we get you updated on high school football. Pleasure. Thank you for coming down. We appreciate your time.
Which one of you two is buying?
Thank you, Mark.
Who's buying? He's buying?
It's on the
I heard there was food, so I came
it's
down.
It's on the former pro athlete.
All right. Aaron,
yeah, the banana coconut thing, whatever that was. All right. We'll return in a moment. We're live at Max&Ermas here in Westerville at the corner of Maxtown and 3C. Hope you can join us here tonight. We're with you till 9 o'clock, and we're with you with this program till 9 o'clock, and we will be back after this time out here on EBSN.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between two great teams and two passionate fan bases. This season, join Germain Honda of Dublin and Germain Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Germain Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference to your game.
And right here, Max&Ermas, that means high school football. The OHSAA This Week in High School Football show here on EBSN. That's Greg Frey, Marty, Bannister. We're so glad you're with us here this evening. I want to remind you, join every Buckeye game day here at the Max&Ermas as the Ohio State Buckeyes begin their quest for another national title. All day on game day, they invite you to enjoy $5 knockout nachos right here, free kids Sundays, $12 buckets of domestic beer, and a special $5 Buckeye cocktail. How about that? Hey. That's every game day before, during, and after the game, of course. They hear Max&Ermas say, "Go Bucks." They open with Oregon State on Saturday. Greg, we're going to roll through a couple of things from last week before we move to another segment. I talked about the rivalry thing a moment ago, some of the great rivalries around the state. You've been covering high school football for a lot of years. I wanted to throw some of these out, kind of get your thoughts on some of these games and what it's like perhaps to get ready to play in a game like this and how these games are just so bred into communities' psyches and things. And, of course, the one right at the top is the oldest in the state of Ohio. It's the Massillon-Canton-McKinley game. I know our friend George Lehner right away is jumping up and yelling and screaming about this game. It's always the last game of the regular season. It even gets listed on the Vegas parlay sheets and has been featured, of course, in Sports Illustrated. A game like that is so uniquely Ohio, I think, when you think of high school football.
I mean, that's just, it breeds tradition. I mean, those two schools, especially in the history with that game, there's so much history, and it's just, that's a game I've not witnessed. I've wanted to go to that game. I've not witnessed that game, but I know the history of it, and it's just that's what Ohio football is all about.
Absolutely. Some other games of note around the state of Ohio. We talked about Sandusky-Fremont-Ross, the annual battle between the Blue Streaks and the Little Giants. That's the second oldest rivalry in the state of Ohio. They've been playing that game since 1895. Fremont and Sandusky. Dover, New Philadelphia, they've been playing that game since 1896. Ironton and Portsmouth, they have met every year since 1899. It's remarkable. Fourth oldest in the entire state. The first meeting was a scoreless tie on November 30th, 1899. The game was a doubleheader for Ironton, which then played to a scoreless tie against Ashland, Kentucky from right across the river. So, yeah. We talked about the Troy-Piqua game a short time ago,
yes.
how that series is dead even at 62 wins apiece, which is really remarkable. Another interesting one, Parkersburg and Marietta. They've been playing every year since 1903. And our friend Aaron Cassidy, a Marietta guy, it's the battle for the Mid-Ohio Valley. And there have been 108 meetings in that game. So, just right across the river from one another, different states, but it's still an enormous rivalry.
Probably a little bit of an intense rivalry, I would guess. No love lost there, like most rivalries.
That's right. Napoleon and Defiance, as we talked earlier with Jerry Snodgrass, the Maumee River rivalry. Yeah. Some other games. Here's one. Clinton, Massey, and Blanchester play every year. It's dubbed the Cider Keg game. It's played for a red, white, and blue keg. It is the oldest rivalry in Ohio, Greg, that involves a traveling trophy.
Did you say keg or
keg?
Case
keg.
Or cake?
Keg.
Cake.
K-E-G. Keg. Yeah.
K-E-G.
K-E-G.
Wow.
Keg.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. St. Francis de Sales in Toledo and Toledo Central Catholic.
Yes.
They play for the Irish Knight. It's awarded to the winner of that game. The winning school receives and hosts the Irish Knight in their school, along with the aforementioned bragging rights. So, the one when we had Jerry Snodgrass on a short time ago, we talked about the one game, and folks around Central Ohio may not really realize the intensity of this rivalry, but a couple of Southeast Ohio schools, Jackson and Wellston, they've been playing each other for years and years and years. The game goes back, 105 years they've been playing one another. And after next season, that rivalry ends because of the difference in enrollment and the way the series has gone. Jackson has dominated the series. Wellston, a smaller community, they want to try to get their season off to perhaps a little better start, and that game's going by the wayside. I just hate to see things like that.
That's a shame. But Jerry addressed that. There's so many demographic changes that is inevitable that some of those are going to go by the wayside, and it's unfortunate. You'd hate to see the history go out the window because there's so much of it there.
Right. In 2010, Wellston snapped a 19-game losing streak in the series against the Ironmen, and the Wellston City School Superintendent said that one of the reasons why Wellston reached out to Jackson to stop the series, again, was because of the difference in enrollment and the way things had gone one way or the other. Another one that certainly we here in Central Ohio know full well, that's Pickerington Central, Pickerington North. And there may not be a more intense rivalry in Central Ohio right now than that one.
And I saw that one that the second meeting last year. I mean,
state playoffs.
The two meetings last year. I watched the first one on film quite a bit, and it came down literally to one play.
Right.
Jimmy Ryrick thought to pass it could have been a touchdown. It was broken up by one of the linebackers for Pick Central, which was one of the best plays I saw of the year. Mm-hmm. And then they met up again in the playoffs in the regional final, which was. You talk about intensity. The smack talking before that game started was on the field, and I was on the field. I did that broadcast, and it was intense. But I mean, it's hard to believe those two teams with the skill level they have. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned the Olentangy schools, and the amount of talent there too. So those types of rivalries are beginning to bud, in Central Ohio.
Well, in a couple of years, when the OCC realigns, they go to different divisions, Central and North. Which I don't know the reasoning for a lot of it, but I'm wholeheartedly against that. I think they should be in the same. If you're in the same district, you should be in the same division. I just think that's the way it should work.
You're right, but there's so many teams now. You're not going to keep everybody happy.
I think there's more than that because there was some talk before the OCC realigned. Mm-hmm. A number of schools on the east side of Columbus, Groveport, Reynoldsburg, Newark, and some of the other ones were considering going off and forming their own league because they were tired of dealing, for one thing, with the Pickeringtons and losing all the time. Well, okay, I somewhat understand that, but whose fault is that?
As Bobby Bowden would say, go get yourself a better football team.
There you go. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that's probably part of it as well, too. But again, I understand some of the other dynamics of it as well, too. But that's at the top of the list, I think.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that. But maybe there's some underlying
factors. You can't
or
you
there.
won't?
I can't.
Okay.
Can't.
Okay.
Well, maybe there's some factors from the certain athletic directors of the too many clashes.
I can see that as well too. I can certainly see that. Well, you played in a heck of a rivalry game when you were in high school.
Well, I had St. Xavier Moeller. Grew up in Cincinnati. Moeller was a huge rivalry. LaSalle, playing against LaSalle, was you're playing for it's a battle of North Bend. You're
Right.
King of the Road trophy.
Yep.
And that's a big one.
It is.
Both of them
I called
are
that
North
game
Bend
last
Road.
year. That's an amazing atmosphere for a high school football game.
And both have won state championships in the last couple of years. I mean, that's a big deal. And I believe it was 2 years ago. They both LaSalle won a Division II, St. X won a Division I. Talk about King of the Road trophy. I mean,
How about that? Yeah.
2 state champions. That is incredible. And then last week was Cincinnati LaSalle playing Coleraine. And that was the last one. And talk about a rivalry. I mean, that's one I'm familiar with. I grew up in Coleraine Township. There was 0 love lost between those 2 schools. And Coleraine got the better of LaSalle last week to start the season out. And Colerane's a good football team this year. Now this week Coleraine plays Cincinnati St. Xavier, which is, I mean, talk about it. That's one of those 2 teams I believe is going to be coming out of Central Ohio here in about 13 weeks. I really believe that. And maybe throw Elder in that mix, but those 2 teams are really good this year.
That Coleraine-LaSalle game will end after next season. They have one more game, and then after that, it goes by the wayside. So
thank you.
There
See,
you go.
I'm glad you're here.
Well, that's my job. I have to always steer you in the right direction.
Clean up all the,
It takes a big broom. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little high school football in Central Ohio. Brent Ford will join us from the Central Ohio Sports Network, and we'll get his thoughts on what he saw last Friday night. Ironically enough, we were at the same game last Friday night. He probably had a better view of it and probably called it a heck of a lot better than I did. We'll do this when we return here on EBSN as we talk high school football here on the OHSAA This Week in High School Football show.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between 2 great teams and 2 passionate fan bases. This season, join Germain Honda of Dublin and Germain Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Germain Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference in your game.
School football discussion here on the OHSAA This Week in High School Football show here on EBSN. At the far end is the quarterback, Greg Frey and Marty Bannister. We're glad you're spending some time with us here on this Wednesday night. We invite you to come on out. Max&Ermas is still serving food and everything. It's a great place to stop on out. We've had great appetizers. We've had great food here. The French onion burger is a big, big favorite here, so we invite you to stop on out. And also the desserts are great as well, too, as Aaron Cassidy will tell you.
He left.
That's right. He left, but that's okay, though.
But
he's not forgotten. But he's not forgotten. All right. Talking a little high school football right now from the Central Ohio Sports Network, one of the many internet outlets that carries high school football is our good friend Brent Forty. His internet outlet operation for a number of years focused mainly on Westerville Central, but you started to branch out a little bit. We were at the same game last week. We saw Westerville Central Whitehall over on the east side of Whitehall. Your thoughts on what the Warhawks did last week?
I think they started out a little slow. They like to run that spread offense, and I was anticipating LeBron Davis, the quarterback, senior quarterback, coming out and starting a little stronger than what he did. He had 3 big, huge pass plays. I don't want to take that away from him, but it felt like they were starting a little slow. The conversation I had with head coach Brent Morrison earlier in the week kind of felt it should be more explosive at times, but I thought that they established a good run game with Tariq Stewart, over 100 yards in that game. That really helped LeBron Davis get into a groove, and his, I think it was 227 passing yards for LeBron Davis in that game really set the tone for what we potentially are going to see big games out of that young senior quarterback. And I know that they were talking about this kid several years ago when head coach John Magistro was still there. The coaching staff just loved LeBron Davis, and they were giving him time to grow and kind of learn in that position, and I think he really has come a long way.
One question I want to ask you, that game was at Whitehall, correct? So,
yeah.
And it was on grass, which
was
becoming like not the norm.
That's right.
And it can be a factor.
To me, it was a huge factor. I mean, some coaches will play it off. Oh, yeah, we practiced on our grass during the week, and it's not a big deal. But I'm sure you walked the field beforehand, Marty, and it was long. It wasn't very flat. There was a lot of divots.
Walked that field many times.
I was going to say, there are some schools that tend to leave it long.
Yeah.
Not to mention any names, but,
no, but
that's one I've been to where it's been long.
Yeah.
Just saying.
When I was down on the field, as Brent mentioned, talking to some of the Central coaches prior to the game, they were looking at me just shaking their heads. Is it always like this? Yeah, even in 1980 it was like that. That gives you an idea of how the field was. But yeah, and the reasons are obvious, I think. But for a team like Whitehall, which has a lot of speed and a lot of athleticism, that I don't know how that necessarily helps them, but it is what it is.
Well, I think
both teams had to play on it. So
I think practicing on that all the time really helps,
right.
And then knowing that that's where you're going to play has an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
For teams that practice on turf 24/7, I mean that's a disadvantage when you go into a place like Whitehall.
No question. I want to get your thoughts. I don't know if you heard our conversation with both Coach Norrie and Coach Chris from Westerville South about these rivalry games. And you broadcast mainly Westerville Central and know the school very well. What are those games like? How intense are those matchups? A Central North, a North South, a North Central.
Well, I think you can recall the back in the day when it was just North and South in Westerville. I mean, that game played at Crew Stadium. I mean, that's how big that used to be. Not the case anymore. When you come into Westerville, the big thing is who's going to rule the Ville. And there's that sign behind me that says Westerville South ruling the Ville or whatever. I'd like to point out that Westerville Central has been ruling the Ville in football since 2013. So it's a big challenge, and they promote that on their social medias. It's always a big week when it's South or North. The Warriors come in or the Wildcats come in, and there's a different atmosphere, and they're playing for bragging rights in this town. A lot of these guys play with each other in middle school. They know each other from across town. There's just an added fuel there, and I think one thing that helps is that coaches like Brent Morrison, who've been around the program for a long time, know what to expect now. He's the head coach, but he knows what those nights are going to be like, and he's going to prepare his team the best they can for that.
And those games, they're even from a broadcaster standpoint, when you're around them, you see them. There's a different hitch in the giddy up that week. It's obvious to everybody.
Absolutely, and being a little biased, I'm an alum of Westerville Central, so I get a little more excited that week, especially when it's South Week because of the reputation of that program. Playoff appearances, some state tournament appearances. There's that moment of, all right, when is it going to be the time of Westerville Central to kind of reach that peak? And you kind of hope each year that you get to that point. And I remember the first year that Central did beat South for the first time in school history, and that was an amazing game at Westerville Central. And the atmosphere just right up the road here from Max&Ermas was amazing.
You mentioned a moment ago LeBron Davis, the quarterback for Westerville Central, and you called him a young senior. And I think that makes a world of sense because he didn't play a lot up until obviously this year. He played the last couple of games last year because of an injury, and then he stepped in at quarterback. So calling him a young senior I think is a very valid description of him. But down on the field watching him prior to the game, there's a load of athletic talent there.
I mean, if you look at his hands and how he can just grasp a ball, it's amazing. He went up to the quarterback camp up at Michigan State a couple years ago in the summer, and they were just crazy about him. What he could do with his arm, his IQ for football is just off the charts. That's the way the coaching staff described it to me. And I'm beginning to see that because he got into a lot of games at the end last season, and then, like you said, he came in for those last few games after an injury. And you really saw a development, and that really helped him. And head coach Brent Morrison talked about that, how they wanted to get him reps on a Friday night. They wanted to get him that start, and it really helped him prepare for week one. And I think now you're going to see that spread offense really, really expand now.
I know from from coaching quarterbacks, having played the position, those reps when you even in mop-up duty are critical. It does. I mean, it gives a young quarterback so much experience and confidence and those add up. So he may not have experience as far as playing whole games, but it sounds to me like there's a big difference this year in his confidence in what he's doing.
A lot, and I think that it's going to really propel him to a great season, which last year they didn't have a lot of many key receivers. I felt like this year it felt like there's two handfuls of receivers for Westerville Central. I mean, you had Miles Williamson out there, Colton Irwin, Jacob Wallace, to name just a few. Last year I could only name maybe 3. Now you can name about 6 or 7 that can come in and out for LeBron Davis. So multiple weapons are really going to help him in his development, I think.
Brent Ford from the Central Ohio Sports Network is with us. We're talking high school football here at Max&Ermas here on this Wednesday evening. I'm Marty Bannister, Greg Frey, as always, alongside as we talk high school football. Tell us a bit about what you do. We've had our friend Aaron Cassidy on here a number of times, and his Game Day Broadcasting Sports Network. They've evolved into now, I think it's 10 schools they cover, I think is what it is.
A million or something. It's infinite.
It would seem that way. But there's a real need and a real niche for what you guys do, and I think we're seeing that more and more. I'm an old radio guy, and so terrestrial radio still holds a special place for me, but I think this is the future, and both of you guys, doing a pretty good job of jumping in on this on the ground floor.
I appreciate that, Marty, and I try to treat it as a radio broadcast. I set up everything like a radio broadcast would. I got my degree in broadcasting, and so I understand the intricacies of what goes into a broadcast, and I make sure that it's a radio broadcast, but at the same time we try to have fun with it, and we also understand it's high school athletes. We also understand that Grandma and Grandpa from Arizona or Florida are listening, and that's a big thing. I can't tell you how many times someone will come up to me at a basketball game or a football game on senior night and say, we want to thank you for broadcasting all these games, taking the time to talk about our players, our grandson, our granddaughter, if we're talking about other teams at the school. And to me, that's the real reason to get into it, bringing the community together in a way where one voice kind of unites everyone, and it has a special meaning for me, being that I get to do it at my alma mater.
And what kind of loyalty do you get with your listeners / it's social media? It's different, right? It's not radio. What kind of loyalty do you get from the fans, and the feedback do you get from them?
A lot. After every season, when a senior graduates, I usually get 1 or 2 messages from a mom or a dad. Last year I got a great one from a dad who said, even as a freshman, my son and I would take Saturday morning, bring up your archive, and listen to the broadcast from the previous night.
Wow.
He said, even if it was a huge loss, a big win, just a normal regular season game, big playoff game, whatever it may be, they listened to the entirety of the broadcast from beginning of pregame to end of postgame. And he said, we learned from what you talked about. We would actually take some things. I admit, I did not play football. I'm not an expert. I'm no, big time ESPN analyst or anything like that. But
neither's Greg, so you're okay.
Well, okay, so that works.
Okay,
I'm in good company then.
Yeah.
So my little inserts here and there, I guess, go a long way for them, and it makes me kind of feel like I build upon their success. And when they go on to the next level, I get updates once in a while from some of these athletes and their parents saying, started my first year at Denison University, and he's off to a great start. He's on special teams, and he's impressing on the practice field. So it's fun to see those kind of stories come through.
And like I said earlier, what you do and what Aaron Cassidy do, it's such a niche right now. And I think, obviously, that's why we're here right now, because of what we do with EBSN, Interactive Online. That's where this is all going.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't understand that, then you don't grasp what this is all about these days. This is where it's at now.
Everything right on your phone. I mean, that's what it's all about, instant gratification of that information. And to be able to stream a football game or watch a football game on a Friday night from your phone while you're sitting at work or you're at home, you're in the airport, whatever it may be, around the world, you get to enjoy those kind of entertainment. And you're right, that's where the industry is going. And I think Aaron, myself, EBSN, all on the right track of where the trend is going. And I mean, I love what you guys do. I think it's great. The having the talk style with a camera and great interaction through social media. It's such a dynamic. It's different. It's one of the more different platforms in the area, and it's really standing out.
Well, and I think the coaches certainly like it. Yes. We know our friends at the OHSAA certainly like it, and we will try to keep it going as long as is humanly possible. I know the folks at Max&Ermas like it, and we like being here. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely.
And all that. Westerville Central this week, where and whom?
They open up at home for the first time this season, playing host to the Greyhounds of Grove City.
One of those programs that's trying to find its way back from a hit a few years ago with a levy that really just decimated that entire district for a number of years, and still trying to find their way back. Appreciate what you do. Thanks for coming down. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marty.
Brent Ford from the Central Ohio Sports Network. We're going to take a break. When we return, talk a little more high school football. One of the best games in the area last week was the Reynoldsburg Upper Arlington game. Our friend Charlie Danis called that on GBSN, and we'll hear from Charlie when we return after this timeout. We're at Max&Ermas in Westerville. Stay with us. More coming up on EBSN.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between two great teams and two passionate fan bases. This season, join Germain Honda of Dublin and Germain Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Germain Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference in your game.
We are back at Max&Ermas here in Westerville. It's Wednesday night, and of course, that means high school football discussion. It continues for about another 15, 20 minutes or so, along with the quarterback at the far end of the table, Greg Frey. I'm Marty Bannister. We're so glad you're with us here tonight as we talk high school football. Week number 2 of this program, you'll find us here each and every Wednesday night. Whether you like it or not, we're going to be here talking high school football. We like to thank the folks at Max&Ermas for having us out here each and every Wednesday night. They do a great job. We invite you to come on out. The menu, spectacular. Lots of great things to try on the menu. I mentioned that French onion burger a while ago. My wife had that before you got here, Frey. Loved it. You ought to try it. It's right up your alley. French onion burger.
I might, but see, I'm loyal to the tomato mozzarella chicken sandwich.
That's okay, all right.
With the field greens, I mean, you can't beat that.
That sounds real good.
The club sandwich is a killer as well too. I went that direction as well too. Don't forget, Max&Ermas has rolled out their fall menu. Some of the features include the new Asian chopped salad, the aforementioned French onion burger, and the return of a guest favorite, the Smokehouse chicken sandwich. Also, be sure to join them every Tuesday night for Kids Eat Free, as well as Thank You Thursday, where they say thank you to the guests with $5 burgers and endless fries. For more updates, be sure to like the restaurant at Max&Ermas Westerville on Facebook. All right, we continue talking high school football now. As we mentioned, one of the big games in week number 1 took place at Upper Arlington, where Reynoldsburg escaped with a 3-point win, 17-14 over the Upper Arlington Golden Bears. Calling that game last week on Game Day Broadcasting Sports Network is our good friend Charlie Danis, and he's joined us here this evening. Heck of a way to open up a season. No matter how it went, that was one heck of a high school football game.
You rarely see matchups like that week 1 where you have two teams that are hell-bent on trying to make it back to the playoffs. Both these teams have not made it back to the postseason since 2015, and it's even more rare when those big games actually live up to the hype. It was actually a good game throughout. Upper Arlington was down by as much as 10 in the fourth quarter. Sammy Sass rallies them back with a rushing touchdown with about 3 minutes to go. Upper Arlington gets the ball back with 2 minutes to go, and if it had been for a late interception for the Reynoldsburg defense to seal the win, UA might have had a chance to pull out the win. But, yeah, it was a good game. Plenty of Division I talent on that field. College-wise, 5 players from Reynoldsburg have already committed to play at D1 programs. UA has got 2, and Jackson S. is going to Boston College, and Judd Uckart is going to Brown University. A very entertaining game, all in all.
And I think, and Greg knows this, that Reynoldsburg team has won over the last couple of years that they've kind of been on the cusp of making that step and of becoming, I guess for lack of a better term, a powerhouse in Central Ohio. The athletic ability, the talent's obviously there. And, Charlie, I think from what you saw last week, a win like that might have been step one in making that jump.
No question, it was a big win for Reynoldsburg. Buddy White, before this season, came out and said this is the most talented team he has had since being there at Reynoldsburg, and this is his 8th season. So I think that's saying a lot. Obviously, we talked about all the players that have already committed to Division I programs, and they look good. They got great skill position players. They're very strong in the trenches. The only question mark for me going forward for Reynoldsburg is the quarterback position. Michael Watley, a junior, takes over. He was the backup for most of the year last year, and he looked good in some spots. Of course, it helps when you throw to Mershon Rice, who's already committed to Purdue. But he also had a bad interception in the middle of the game that led to an eventual UA score. So the question going forward is, can Watley step up and take control of that quarterback position? Because there's no question that he's got the weapons that can take this Reynoldsburg team far. It's a question of him stepping up in that role and taking them to the promised land, taking them back to the postseason.
I think that's part of when you're a young quarterback like that. He's not really played on varsity level. Physically, he's gifted enough to do that, but that's part of those are the reps that you got to be able to win games like that and make those mistakes and bounce back going forward and learn from that. So I've gotten to know him a little bit in the last couple of years, and I've seen him throw the football, and he can throw the football. So
absolutely,
I think to me that's a good sign. Week 1, he did make some mistakes, but he also made the plays when he needed to, and he did enough that they can win. And I would also go back to the last couple of years they have been knocking on the door. And Marty, we talked about pick Central, pick North. Reynoldsburg has been giving those guys fits because of their athleticism. And I've coached against Reynoldsburg when I was at Pick North, so I know what it's about when you coach them. They got some athletes. And if Buddy White's saying this is his best team, that's not a team anybody else wants to face as this year goes on because of their athleticism and because of their toughness.
Oh, absolutely not. And I'll tell you what, Mershon Rice is going to be one player to definitely watch out for Reynoldsburg. Like I said, it helps when you're the quarterback, Michael Watley. I saw him throw 2 go routes essentially to Rice, and he made it look so easy, like Randy Moss-esque when it comes to getting past the secondary, easily getting into the end zone. He had 8 catches for well over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'll tell you what, Purdue coach Jeff Braun better be very excited about getting this young man going to West Lafayette next year.
I don't think there's any question he is. Reynoldsburg this Friday night will play at Licking Heights. Kind of an interesting matchup against a smaller division school, Licking Heights, a district, again, one of those suburban districts where they're starting to grow and gain some enrollment numbers and starting to get enough players so maybe they can compete up a level or two. Certainly a big game for Licking Heights on Friday night. But Reynoldsburg, again, dropping down a division. Upper Arlington on Friday, Charlie. What do the Golden Bears have?
Well, I think they have a very strong front seven, first off. I loved how they were getting after the quarterback, of course, forcing the mistake by Watley, forcing the turnover, which led to an eventual score. I love the defensive line. Jackson Ness is already committed to play at Boston College. He's going to be playing defensive tackle. I thought that they were able to get after the quarterback. I thought that Nick Fasonic, who made the move from weak side linebacker to middle linebacker, he looked very good stopping the run. If it weren't for those 2 plays by Mershon Wright, Upper Arlington looked pretty good defensively. So I think there's a lot to like on that side of the ball. And I also really like what Sammy Sass did at the quarterback position. This is a kid that's Mr. Athlete at Upper Arlington. Right. He plays football. He plays basketball. He's committed to play baseball for Wright State as a catcher. So there's no question he's got a great arm. I saw him make 2 great plays. One was a throw to Steve Baer, who's expected to be a big-time playmaker at wide receiver in the back of the end zone, a 21-yard dart that he made that look effortless. And then the scrambling ability that he displayed, especially late in the game. I predict big things for Sammy Sass. Last year was his first year as a starter, and he kind of had that look of a deer in the headlights type of thing.
Right.
But now he's been able to step up. He really talked about how he matured as a leader and how he was taking more ownership in that role, especially as a senior. So hopefully he'll be primed for a big 2018 for the Golden Bears.
I saw him last year hit a game-winning three-point shot against Dublin Kaufman in one of the really better high school basketball games that I saw last year, calling that game. Upper Arlington, you'll be on the road Friday night going up to Findlay.
Yep.
Findlay came down here last week and took on Hilliard Bradley, took the Jaguars to overtime before losing 35-28. Anytime you go on the road, though, it's a little different animal, especially traveling up to that part of the state.
Absolutely. Hour 45 drive up 23, if I recall, and it's a beautiful stadium. That's going to be the first thing that I'll look out for. That's going to be my first time going up to Findlay, so I'm really looking forward to that. But, yeah, like you said, they pushed Hilliard Bradley. Their quarterback had 4 rushing touchdowns, Findlay's did, and it seemed like every time they were on the goal line, big fella just go ahead and take it in the end zone. So it's going to be interesting to see how UA does against that run game.
And this seems to be, pardon me, Marty.
Please go ahead,
This
Greg.
is a game of urgency for this Arlington program.
Yes.
You go 0-1 and losing a game that you had a chance to win, probably, it sounds like. But you got to go on the road to a team that's a pretty good football team. You don't want to be 0-2 after 2 weeks.
Well, and especially considering in week 3 they welcome in Winton Woods. And we know the season that Winton Woods had last year. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Just a run-of-the-mill team who happened to lose in the Division II
Who's
state title.
scheduling that, right?
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah.
Ouch.
And then Westerville South to boot for the non-conference schedule. So, yeah, this game is important. UA needs to bounce back in the worst way. They need to get that first win under their belts, and they need some confidence heading into that Winton Woods game coming up in week 3.
Looking forward to seeing that one up Arlington, Winton Woods in a couple of weeks. Charlie Daniels, we appreciate you coming down. Appreciate your time, pal.
Thanks, man. Appreciate
All
it.
right, we'll take a timeout. When we come back, Greg and I put the wraps on another edition of the High School Football Preview Show. Run down some of the bigger games coming up this Friday night. Look ahead to week number 2. We're closing in on the computer playoff rankings. Just a couple of weeks away for that as well, too. More at Max&Ermas here in Westerville after this timeout. Here on EBSN, the Ohio High School League Association, this week in High School Football Preview Show.
Powerball. Don't get caught without one.
The Rivalry, a historic showdown between 2 great teams and 2 passionate fan bases. This season, join Germain Honda of Dublin and Germain Honda of Ann Arbor as we relive the greatest moments in the history of the game, with special offers for listeners. Discover Honda's award-winning lineup of cars and SUVs, like the 2017 CR-V, starting at just over $24,000. But rest assured, whether you're in Ann Arbor or Columbus, you can count on Germain Honda to deliver the right car, the right price, the right way.
It really is the difference between winning and losing, being able to get your hands inside, defeat blockers, and it works at all positions and all skill levels. I'm Joey Bosa. See the difference to your game.
This week in High School Football Show here on EBSN. Marty, Bannister, Greg Frey, remaining moments left. We want to run down some of the big games coming up this Friday night as we get to week number 2 of the high school football season. And again, much like week number 1, we're going to see some matchups that are very interesting. Looking down some of the list of games, we talked about that Findlay Upper Arlington game, and Greg, you had a great thought about that as we came out of the break. If UA stumbles on Friday at Findlay, then they got to come back home and take on Winton Woods. I mean, you talk about going out of the frying pan into the fire.
Well, I can tell you
at 0-2.
In their locker room, there's no discussion of if.
No,
they cannot afford to be 0-2, and they know that. And it sounds like they were very much in that game against Reynoldsburg. So that's one of those correctable mistakes week 1 to week 2. But you got to go on the road and play Findlay, who took Bradley to overtime. That's that is no small task. Best luck to the Bears.
That'll be a tremendous game on Friday night, no question. Also around the area this coming Friday, week number 2. One I'm excited about. I'll have a chance to call this game on Spectrum Friday night. Wheelersburg plays at Hartley. Wheelersburg, the defending Division V state champion. Folks, they haven't lost a regular season game since 2014, and they come to play at Hartley, which is coming off a bit of a home road spanking last week of a Toledo Central Catholic. If there's a coach in Central Ohio that you know will have his team ready to play in a game like this on Friday night, it's Brad Birchfield at Hartley.
Yes, he has sold me plenty in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But they have played Toledo Central Catholic tough the last couple of years.
Yeah,
those
they have.
games have been close.
They
for
got
the most
hammered
part.
Friday. They got hammered.
That's
Friday
what I'm saying.
night.
That tells you something. So either TCC's really good, or this might be a year where Hartley's not quite where they've been. But that's going to be an interesting game because Wheelersburg, as we know, they're that team last
loaded.
year, one of the best teams I've seen. D5 in quite a long time.
And the majority of their skill people are all back, including Tanner Holden, who's a Mr. Football candidate in the state of Ohio, and a Mr. Basketball candidate in the state of Ohio as well. 6'6", 180-pounder at that wideout spot. Also plays defensive back. And Trent Sawyer's a quarterback. They got some weapons. Hartley's got his hands full. I'm looking forward to seeing that one Friday.
That quarterback, he what he did in the state championship game last year was one of the best performances on a broken leg that
That's right. Broken right fibula.
Took him 80 yards on a broken leg and won the game. Won the state championship. That was that's one of the best things I've seen.
Elsewhere in the area on Friday night, I think what could be a very interesting game. Watterson plays at Olentangy Orange. And that's an Orange team. Again, Zachary Harrison is the headliner for that team. They got a lot of talent on that squad. And a Watterson team that year in and year out, they're one of the powers in the Central Catholic League. That'll be an interesting test on Friday.
Well, you would hope so, but Watterson didn't start out so good last week.
Not.
So we'll see how they bounce back.
Also in the area on Friday night, some of the other games that stand out, Dublin Kaufman traveling on the road to play at Gahanna. Gahanna came up short, but they had a difficult task losing at Cincinnati Elder. But they're back home now and get a Kaufman team, again, that they've got a lot of talent. They picked up a big win last week over Perrysburg. So I think that's going to be a very entertaining matchup out on the east side.
We'll see if Gahanna can pay some dividends because they scrimmaged St. Xavier 2 weeks ago. Then they went to Cincinnati Elder, and they didn't score a point in either one of those.
Right.
So they got some improvement to make, but they played two of the best programs in the state of Ohio. So to get their home turf, hopefully they can get back and play well.
Another one, Dublin Jerome travels out to Pickerington North to take on the Panthers. And last year that game was one-sided. It was no contest. It was over pretty much by the time Pickerington North got off the bus. But Dublin Jerome, they were impressive in their opener last week, and I think this has the potential to be an interesting matchup.
It very much could be. North won against Liberty last week, so they started right out where they left off last year, looking pretty solid. So it could be a very interesting matchup. You can't write off Jerome, that's for sure.
The Hilliards, Darby and Davidson, two of the three Hilliards, will square off. They'll play at Davidson on Friday night. Brian White's one of those guys, the head coach at Hilliard-Davidson. I think in some respects, kind of like Brad Birchfield, you just never really know what he's got up his sleeve, what he's going to roll out at you. And if you don't know anything about high school football in Central Ohio, Hilliard-Davidson, they won a few state championships. they have a pedigree, and in a rivalry game like this, that could be a very entertaining game.
Well, Brian's a guy that I have the utmost respect for. He does more with less than any coach I have seen. I mean,
that's a great point.
He is the master of that, and he'll downplay it too. I mean, he might be a better down player than Lou Holtz ever was. I mean, he's not going to let you know.
I think that's possible.
Yeah, but he will have his guys ready. There's no doubt.
We should have asked Mark Norrie about this when we had him on. Hilliard Bradley, outstanding team. They go to Stowe Monroe Falls, Mark Norrie's last stop.
Yes.
So that game's on Friday.
And
night.
I talked to Tom Phillips, who's now the head coach at Stowe. I talked to Tom today about that game, and he's like, Bradley's good. They lost some seniors last year, but they didn't lose a lot. They're very athletic, so that's going to be a game. Bradley, I would think Bradley can get that done because Stowe really struggled week one.
Yeah, absolutely. Some other games in the area that stand out as we move into week number 2 of the season. DeSales plays at Lancaster. Lancaster went on the road last week, lost at Springfield. DeSales, again, a lot of talent on that football team. That'll be an interesting stop for DeSales traveling down Route 33. Reedy plays at West Jefferson. When you think of small schools in Central Ohio, for years, those two names have been right near the top of the list with as much what they've been able to do. We know the folks in West Jefferson. That's always year in year out. That's always one of the quality small division high school teams in the area.
Very much so. Those are two programs that breed winning. So that's going to be an interesting matchup.
Also, some of the other games that stand out. Olentangy goes on the road to play at Miamisburg. Olentangy Liberty plays host to another program. When you think about talent in the state of Ohio, this place just oozes college-level talent. Cleveland Glenville. How about that?
Yeah, if you haven't seen a Glenville game, you need to go watch them play because that is an eye-opening experience.
And they bring a lot of talent to the table, and that one will be on Friday up at Olentangy Liberty. A couple other games that stand out before we wrap it up. Pickering and Central, they'll be home to play West Toronto Prep. After beating a team from Chicago, now they get one from the north of the border. in West Ontario Prep. So that game will be Friday out at the Swamp out at Pickering and Central. So that should be an interesting matchup out there. Well, that's what they call it.
Yeah.
Also, let's see, anything else that stands out in here. Those are pretty much the highlight games, I think, coming up on Friday night. Yeah, that's pretty much as you look down the list of games.
New Albany and Dublin Scioto.
Yeah, that could be a good game. Marysville at Delaware could be an entertaining matchup as well, too. Again, one of those nearby rivalries, separated by about 20 miles of Route 36. That could be an interesting game,
absolutely.
Too. So there you go. That will pretty much do it for what we will see this Friday night, week number 2 of the high school football season. So we invite you to be back with us next Wednesday back here at Max&Ermas for another edition of this program. More guests, more coaches, and we'll again look back at week number 2. We'll preview week number 3. Don't forget as well, too, Spectrum Television will have games on Friday night. I'll be at Hartley for the Wheelersburg-Hartley game. Then invite you to join me after the game on 98.9 The Answer for our Yard Solutions 5th quarter scoreboard show. All the scores from all the games out there. We'll have all those for you, allowing I can get through traffic and get from Hartley up to the north side of Columbus, which last week was rather entertaining getting up there. That was rather entertaining getting up there, but we made it with no problem, so we're looking forward to that as well, too. Always a pleasure, my friend. I know you're looking forward to week 2.
Absolutely.
All right, we're back with you next Wednesday night. Thanks to the staff here at Max&Ermas. Great job as always. We appreciate that. They do a tremendous job. We invite you to stop here. Just don't come here on Wednesdays when we're here.
That's true.
They're open every day of the week, and they do a great job with a great menu, and we are so fortunate to be allowed to come in here and talk high school football to you and yours here on EBSN. All right, that'll do it. Thanks to our EBSN staff. Great job as always. Jake and the entire crew, we appreciate it. We're back with you next Wednesday night right here on EBSN.